Delete. Yep. Top of the day, beautiful people. I am having some Wi-Fi issues. I've been here trying to get this going. First, YouTube was acting up. Then Facebook came on. Then it started acting up again. So I was restarting my computer. Hold on. Let me try it again. Now that I got y'all on. Can y'all hear me good? Shayla, hey girl, hey Vinette. Greetings. Hold on, y'all. Today, Shalom, Tabitha. Shalom, Mom. I'm trying to get these Wi-Fi issues worked out. It was good last night. Come get on this morning. Don't nothing want to work. Let's try it again. I was on time, y'all, but clearly y'all couldn't see it because I couldn't bring y'all on. Okay, let's try this again. I was like, oh, they might have got me again. Okay. All right. Okay. We live again on Facebook. I just deleted that first video. It was doing good for a couple of minutes and it started doing the same thing, which I'm thinking it was my Wi-Fi. So I just reset everything. All right, beautiful people. Happy Tuesday. It is October. I'm sorry, not October. It's November the 1st. Remember, November the 1st, 2022. Day 252 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 4-year consecutive day count, day 1271. We are still in the introduction of Oahspe, and we paused on page 14. We're gonna read a little bit more of that when we get to our end mark today. We're gonna pick back up with chapter 1, and let me get it. And the field guide to the spirit world. All right, y'all. Father, we thank you that your power is within everything. All right, y'all. Page 14. Shebrew, hey girl, hey, Kendra, Shalom, Hannah, Grand Rising, Facebook, and everybody else hanging out in the background of both places. Top of the morning to you. Okay, right here. Okay, also today, depending on if we get to that part, which I think we may not. Yeah, I think so. Let me just start reading. How many minutes was I? Okay. We'll extend the first half of the reading time by the minute. So, okay. All right. We was at page 14, right side of the page, very bottom paragraph where it starts off, Dr. Newbro. Newbro, however, embraced the idea of this possibility with a passion, and after several false starts and many difficulties, he managed to set the stage for his experiment near Las Cruces, New Mexico in 1884, which we found out this is where the John Land plates are still being held, right at the New Mexico State University in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And this is, remember, we started just quick overview of yesterday. He was talking about starting an actual community of Shalom, right? So that's where it picks back up here. All right. An undertaking of such magnitude at that time would not have been easy under the best circumstances, but Dr. Newbro made the project unnecessarily complicated and burdensome by his mistaken conviction to interpret the Book of Shalom literally and going to a place where the world's people would not live to make it a place of peace and plenty. Literally, and going to a place where the world's people would not live to make it a place of peace and plenty. A place of peace and plenty. Okay, so he pretty much went to a desert and made the desert bloom. He's like, ain't nobody, he picked the place, ain't nobody gonna be here. So this is a place, don't nobody want to be here. We'll go here and we'll make it habitable, right? So it is easy to say in retrospect that the project was driven more by blind idealism than by common sense. But the fact remains that the effort was a sad failure and a painful lesson in the realities of human nature in its present undeveloped state. For factual reasonably unbiased and scholarly account of this experiment, we recommend reading Shalom, Utopia on the Rio Grande, 1881 through 1907 by Lee Priestley, 1998, El Paso, Texas, Texas Western Press, or viewing the documentary Utopia on the Rio Grande by Robin Riley. I actually came across this yesterday. Like, I completely don't even remember reading this the first time, but this is one of the references that I didn't post yet because I got it, but I wasn't able to open it up. So I'm looking for other places where this might be to get this full story. All right. So I got that up on my page. I got to go back to that a little bit later today. And if I'm able to get a copy of it, I'm going to look for it in a couple different places. When I get it, I'm going to share it in the community section, and I'm going to share it on Facebook too. Jamia, shalom, shalom. Okay. We're on page 15 or page XV, left side, second paragraph down. John B. Newbrough was born on June 5th, 1828 in Mohokenville, Ohio, near Worcester. Though he was raised on a farm by a family with limited means, he eventually was able to attend Cincinnati Medical College and establish himself as a practicing physician. During his schooling, however, he gained experience in dentistry, and after finding life as a physician too disturbing for his sensitive nature, he turned efforts to dentistry instead. And also the article that I sent to y'all yesterday, the one that I posted, it's in both Facebook and YouTube community section. It goes into a deeper detail of his life and what actually happened before he got into dentistry and when he got into dentistry, all the way up until the time he was sued by the company for the dental plates that he was making, but he ultimately won it. But that's really good detail. I'm actually going to read you a little blurb from there when it gets to the part about him actually getting up early in the morning. It goes into deeper detail, some that I didn't read in here, but it was interesting to note how they put it in there. He had begun fasting as well. I'm like, see, yeah, this is how it starts, right? Along with cleaning up his lifestyle of eating, with him being a vegetarian, but it goes into a little bit deeper detail of what he was actually eating when he was first vegetarian. Then as it got closer to the actual overshadowing of Oahspe, how he cut out all dairy, no eggs, no milk, and he literally only ate fruits that like grew high, right? That was closest to the sun. I'm like, yo, this is amazing. And we read a little bit about that back here too. Listen. John B. Newbrough was born on June 5th, 1828 in Mohicanville, Ohio, near Worcester. Though he was raised on a farm by a family with limited means, he eventually was able to attend Cincinnati Medical College and establish himself as a practicing physician. During his schooling, however, he gained experience in dentistry, and after finding life as a physician too disturbing for his sensitive nature, he turned his efforts to dentistry instead. Following the completion of his education, he joined the 1849 gold rush to California, where he was successful at accumulating a small fortune. He later compounded that fortune in the gold fields of Australia. He then moved on to world travel, eventual marriage, and by about 1859, he established residency in New York City. There, he pursued his practice in dentistry for the next 25 years. He became one of the prominent dentists of New York City, and he was innovative enough to develop a revolutionary and inexpensive composition for dental plates that made the appliances more accessible to the poor. Throughout his life, Dr. Newbrough displayed a natural mediumistic ability of high caliber. He often received spirit communications that made him aware that there is more to the world around us than what is apparent to our normally limited senses, and that there was much more meaning and purpose to our lives than what we can deduce from our experience during our limited time on the mortal plane. And it also talks a little bit about his parents, of which I thought this was really interesting. Before they got to Ohio, John was born in Ohio, but his parents moved from here, from Virginia. His dad actually went to the College of William and Mary. My company does projects for William and Mary, right? I was like, yo, this is amazing. And his mom went as he was a young boy. There were a lot of supernatural, spiritual things happening to John that his dad at first was like, get out of here with that foolishness, boy, it's your imagination. But his mom understood and knew better. And so anytime those things would happen to John, he would talk with his mom, right? Um, but his mom did pass away some years later. And after that, when it was just him and his dad, things began, supernatural and spiritual things began happening to his dad that made his dad a believer in the unseen realm, right? So it's a lot of history. John didn't just get started when he became a dentist and stuff. Like supernatural things have been happening to him from his birth, right? It's so good. I gotta read y'all just this little portion. But if y'all go, it's like 26 pages what I posted yesterday. I got up to like page 15. All right, so, but it's really, really good. It's really insightful. Okay. Hold on. Oh, let me go back up. Let me just start this paragraph again. Throughout his life, Dr. Newbro displayed a natural medium mystic ability of high caliber. He often received spirit communications that made him aware that there is more to the world around us than what is apparent to our normally limited senses, and that there is much more meaning and purpose to our lives than what we can deduce from our experience during our limited time on the mortal plane. He became convinced that the information received from friends and relatives who had crossed the veil was of limited value, and that if he wanted to receive enlightened information from more highly developed sources, he needed to prepare himself in ways that would make himself more amenable to their enlightened presence. Perhaps this notion was impressed upon him by those in spirit who were already grooming him as a potential candidate from the imminent transmission of Oahspe. Whether or not the idea was inspired, he did convert to a strict vegetarian lifestyle, and he followed a prayerful discipline to purify both mind and body. During this time, he continued to be exercised for medium mystic development by an overshadowing that asked him countless questions no mortal could answer intelligently, but perhaps directed his mind into a more spiritually compatible point of reference. And this right here, you can find out a lot about this by that book that he wrote entitled Spiritualis, because he shares a lot of this information during this time of his life. This was before Oahspe had happened. The book Spiritualis, he was sharing what was happening to him and how the different spirits and stuff was coming to him, asking him questions, and all that supernatural interaction that was happening at that time, right? Okay. You started up, but you ended up falling asleep. Get back to it, Ima. Prince, shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings, Elijah. That's a part one. I just got Cosmo Cal video. He talked a lot about what you're reading from. I know he was doing it. I missed his video. Because I knew he had one coming up, but we was out. I saw it had popped up. Me and my husband and the kids were out yesterday, and I was like, I'm gonna have to come back to this. And I forgot to come back to it. I completely forgot about it. I'm gonna have to watch it today if I get a chance today or tomorrow. Okay. All right, y'all. All right. We at the bottom of page 15 on the left side. Let's see. During this time, he continued to be exercised for mediumistic development by an overshadowing that asked him countless questions no mortal could answer intelligently, but perhaps directed his mind into a more spiritually compatible point of reference. When his overshadowing decided that the time had come, that conditions were finally suitable, and that Dr. Newbro was to be the vehicle of choice to be used, he suddenly began to receive Oahspe. He was told to purchase a typewriter and to sit for half an hour before dawn daily, at which time the angelic overshadowing typed the manuscript through his hand. And this wasn't the first time that this happened. It actually gives some detail, what I posted yesterday, of when he didn't just do it here, but he would speak, right? So what we call prophecy, angels or unseen hosts would use his body as a vehicle to speak, right? Unseen things or things from the spiritual realm. He was instructed to put all he was instructed to put all the typed pages aside until the work was completed. Then after working for 1 year, he was told to read and publish the text. It would be logical to assume that the angelic overshadowing who cultivated Dr. Newbro's development for the specific task of transmitting Oahspe would also develop other mediums for the same purpose at the same time. It would seem unnecessarily risky to place all of your hopes for so important a task upon one individual, and by nurturing several mediums at the same time, it would be easier to determine who had developed the qualities most suited to their purpose. There is ample evidence to suggest that this may well have been their methodology, since several highly developed mediums living at that time also received high quality communications, some of which included information similar to the aspects of the messages Dr. Newbro received. And one of them, I believe, at that time was the Third Testament, given in about this time in South America, right, through this other gentleman. We believe, and I'm not saying I mentioned it yesterday, but I haven't looked at that text in a while, because when I first got a hold of it, where my mind and understanding was at that point, it is nowhere near even close to where it is today. That's why I said I got to revisit that text. I just remember certain things about it that I saw that was truth. Okay. There is ample evidence to suggest that this may well have been their methodology, since several highly developed mediums living at the same time also received high quality communications, some of which included information similar to the aspects of the messages Dr. Newbro received. We believe these other writings support and confirm the value of Oahspe and suggest that other individuals were being cultivated simultaneously for the same purpose, for the same possible purpose. Even Oahspe states that other people in other places would be inspired similarly and that they would be brought together. Although it seems that other avenues may have been explored, it is evident that Dr. Newbro displayed the right degree of development at the right time, and consequently, the task of producing Oahspe was placed in his hands. It is worth reiterating that this was not done because he was a high raised prophet or saint, but because he was simply a very talented and highly developed medium in the right place at the opportune moment. Oahspe was not his book. There is every reason to believe that the information it offered was as much news to him as it was to other people who read it, and he was as much impressed by its message as anyone else. It was for this reason that he decided to undertake the building of his community called Shalom, taken from the parable describing the society of the future in Oahspe's Book of Shalom. He was told by the angelic overshadowing administering the Oahspe project that the world at that time had not yet reached a level of development amenable to the ideals of Shalom. But if he wanted to try to build such a community, it was certainly his choice, and he was free to do so. Perhaps Dr. Newbro was overconfident. Perhaps his enthusiasm for Oahspe clouded his judgment. It does seem, however, that he did attempt to follow the example of the Book of Shalom too literally. Within several short years, April 23rd, 1891, Dr. Newbro died from pneumonia, secondary to influenza. Not long after his death, Dr. Newbro's experimental community failed. You'll also read about this towards the end of that document, although I didn't read the last like 10 pages, but I did skip to the back just to kind of see. And I remember we was talking about the children who had passed away, and I think it was Jamia that said she heard about it, but she hadn't actually read it anywhere. In that, it explains that I forget how many children it was. I think it was like out of the first set of children, that came, I think it was like 20. Don't quote me on that. But I know 3 of them died. It says that they died from yellow fever. And it gives a few details about that. Key, shalom, shalom. So that's the document I posted yesterday in the community section. And in the comments, I put it in both places. I pasted it as a separate post for Facebook and in the comment section of yesterday's video for Facebook too. Okay. Within several short years, April 23rd, 1891, Dr. Newbrough died from pneumonia secondary to influenza. Not long after his death, Dr. Newbrough's experimental community failed. His most loyal co-worker, Andrew Howland, tried to carry on, but eventually surrendered to grim reality and closed Shalom in 1907. Especially he hadn't went through all the work and stuff that John did in spiritual cleansing. It was inevitable that it was going to fail. Right? The original manuscript of Oahspe, as well as the oil portraits of the prophets Newbrough painted automatically during his early years at Shalom, no longer exist. One story relates that these items had been stored in the basement of a house in El Paso, Texas. A mudslide from a severe storm washed into the house, completely destroying the manuscript and paintings. Another story, but probably closer to the truth, relates that Newbrough's daughter, Justine, who had possession of these items, but who was known to harbor bitter feelings about her Shalom experience, impulsively destroyed them one day in a backyard bonfire to dispose of them. And probably her bitter feelings come from, it shares a little bit about that, and John's first wife and the kind of bitterness and stuff that was going on a little bit. And he divorced his wife because he said she was lacking in the whole affection portion to him. And although they were living under the same roof for many years, there was like no affection shown towards him. And he didn't trust her because she was more liberal with everything, and he was really strict about things. And she loved alcohol and wine, right? All alcohol, and she was just, and they went through, I'm not going to say a bitter divorce or whatever, but he was fighting to keep, when they went through the divorce, he was fighting to keep her from taking anything that would belong to Shalom, because he was in the process of doing that. And he was afraid that she was going to try and take stuff that he had set aside for the children. He seemed like a really nice dude who really loved children, right? He just didn't want her having any kind of access to that just because of her lifestyle of just freeness of alcohol and really not being able to control herself. Another story, but probably closer to the truth, relates that Newbrough's daughter Justine, who had possession of these items, but who was known to harbor bitter feelings about her Shalom experience, impulsively destroyed them one day in the backyard bonfire to dispose of them. Either way, what is obvious is that no special value had been placed on these items by anyone involved, or else greater care would have been taken to preserve them. Perhaps they were considered superfluous since the manuscripts and the portraits had already been published. Perhaps the angelic overshadowing, still overseeing ongoing developments, actually wanted these remaining objects destroyed. Clearly, that act decisively eliminated any possibility that anyone might eventually possess these items as coveted relics and assume unwarranted authority or legitimacy as sole interpreter of the text, an idea antithetical to the teachings of Oahspe. The Rio Grande Historical Collections, under the auspices of New Mexico State University. This told us this. Like, I completely do not remember reading this. I just had to do some research and found this. Listen, the Rio Grande Historical Collections, under the auspices of New Mexico State University at Las Cruces, has become a valuable source for historical information relating to Shalom. Like, we read this, like it was in our face. And I didn't realize I'm doing more research and it brought me right back to this, which this book told us. That's interesting. Oahspe is easily the most unique book in the English language. Its objective is formidable, for it states that within its pages, it has herein made known the plan of the Creator's delightful creations for the resurrection of the peoples of the earth. Oahspe also states that the book's purpose is to teach mortals how to attain to hear the Creator's voice and to see his heavens in full consciousness while still living on the earth, and to know of a truth the place and condition awaiting them after death. Let me read. I'm not going to be able to finish all of this because I want to read. Maybe I should save that for tomorrow. Okay, I'm gonna save that for tomorrow, for after we read this part, because I thought I was gonna get to this and read it right after this. So that's gonna have to wait because it may not seem out of place, especially if we've already been here, because we've read it. But it just gives more detail of what actually happened. It's like 4 paragraphs, and if you go in here and read what I posted yesterday, it starts on page 6 all the way to the end of page 8. That's what I'm gonna read. So you can read ahead if you want to, but I'm gonna save that for tomorrow when we actually get to that portion here in the introduction. So let me read like a couple more little paragraphs here, then I'll pause. Okay. As awe-inspiring as the possibility of such a revelation may be, Oahspe reminds us that we should not worship this book, for it states, "Not infallible, immaculate is this book, Oahspe." We should therefore not allow ourselves to fall into the trap of making it into an flexible rule book to be quoted chapter and verse, which would negate our fundamental obligation to think, to reason, and to grow. Rather, we should use this volume as a guide to further our own spiritual understanding and as a source for basic fundamental principles that can be used to shape and mold our future development. We are confident that there is enough substance within its pages to provide for our growth throughout our mortal lives and well beyond that as well. We'll pause right there. Okay. All right, y'all. Oh, you know what? I got a couple more minutes. Let's use it because, yeah, let's use it. Okay, we keep going. A couple more paragraphs. I got time because I said I was gonna add them few minutes. It's like 5 minutes I was late, so we'll go to the say like 35 minutes. Okay. The text infers that the host of high-raised angelic beings who caused the Oahspe to be written and published were commissioned specifically for that purpose by those above them who administer the higher heavens. Oahspe states that Earth is just one of countless planets in our universe inhabited by human beings. It also states that all planets follow a similar pattern of development, though the details differ substantially. Whenever humanity does rise, it eventually reaches a stage of development called cosmon, when spiritual and corporal knowledge is ready to culminate into a state of natural maturity and balance. When this level of maturity is when this level of maturity is soon to begin, evolving near the commencement of this era, the angelic hosts provide information that will complement this evolutionary process for the benefit of those individuals who have progressed enough to appreciate the transformative concepts offered. Their efforts to assist our coming of age take many forms, but one aspect includes clearing the air of falsehoods, half truths, and misinformation about who we really are, where we came from, and where we are going. To accomplish this task, Oahspe begins with a history of our planet for the past 24,000 years and more, tracing events that occurred not only on earth, but in the heavens surrounding the earth during that same period of time. Oahspe states that corporal events are much more influenced by events in the spirit world than the other way around. This is due in part to the fact that those who have crossed into the world of spirit are by nature still able to perceive and influence the corporal plane, while those who are still in corporality are much less able to even perceive the conditions in spiritual dimensions of existence, let alone influence it. Thus, the saying, as above, so below. Oahspe symbolically highlights this principle by physically arranging the text so that history on the spirit plane is superimposed above the history on the corporal plane during the same cycle. For example, the book of Oth appears above the Lord's first book, covering heavenly and earth history over the same time period. The book of Oth is read first, followed by the Lord's first book. Heavenly history is then picked up again by jumping ahead to the book of Sue and so on. Oahspe states that the creator Oahspe states that the creator, and there is but one, regardless of the name you wish to use, made humanity to be co-creators and helpmates in an ever unfolding universe. Each and every one of us is a new and pristine creation at the moment of conception. All of us are given a spark of the ever present at that moment that makes us very much a part of our creator, who is the essence of all life and all that is, was, or ever shall be. Though our awareness of life and spirit is clouded by the influence of our physical bodies and our necessity to deal with a physical environment through limited physical senses, we are actually spiritual beings here and now. This means that we are already residing in the dimension of spirit, thought, and mind, even though we are melded for the moment with the physical frame and the corporal dimension of existence, right? So this we are literally spirits. This is the first part of our education. We get two, well, I can't call it a parent. We just get this frame. We get this anchor, so to speak, to keep our spirit here on this plane. Our flesh, our body is our anchor here to help develop our spirit. And a lot of time we lose sight of that, or we don't even know that at all. Some people didn't even know that before they went to the grave, that their spirits and this first part of life is the physical realm that we're born into to help develop us in the beginning stages of our spiritual life. So we're spiritual beings having this human experience. I'm sure if you heard that before. All right, babe. So don't forget that we are spirits, and we're here to develop our spirits with this fleshly body, not the other way around. Although it will develop simultaneously, well, it should. But just remember that we're in spiritual school, right? And we're here to learn the principles like of a 3D world and corporality, right? This means that we are already residing in the dimension of spirit, thought, and mind, even though we are melded for the moment with a physical frame in the corporal dimension of existence. Just as a fetus resides in a womb, which is the ideal environment in which to grow until it is strong enough to subsist on its own, our spirit is at first housed in a corporal body until it is strong enough to subsist on its own in the eternal world of spirit. And those that die before their time or who are born in chaos, they can be likened to stillborn babies. They're literally stillborn into spirit, right? Dumb, knowing nothing. They're completely dead, right? But thanks be unto our great creator that they can be revived, right? Here, this flesh can't be, but the spirit never dies. Just as a fetus resides in the womb, which is the ideal environment in which to grow until it is strong enough to subsist on its own. Our spirit is at first housed in a corporal body until it is strong enough to subsist on its own in the eternal world of spirit. Consequently, the reality is that the spiritual beings that are real to us enter the spirit world at death as easily as standing up from a chair, because the essence of our beings also, I'm sorry, because the essence of our beings already resides in the dimension of spirit, thought, and mind, even though that reality is not apparent to us. In other words, at the moment of death, we do not go anywhere because we are already there. We do not leave our physical body leaves us, like a discarded shroud that is no longer of any use. We begin where we left off, unchanged, except for the renewed perfection of our spiritual bodies and with the same consciousness as before. So I've also heard, and I mentioned it before, that when we die, we're made perfect in spirit. No, you become Holy Spirit, but you still are just as imperfect as you was when you had your body. Now, class just continues to go on for you, or you can choose not to grow, and you can sit there and you can be the class clown, pulling stunts on people, making them think they got haunted houses and all this stuff. Like, we got a bunch of class clowns hanging around the earth realm. They refuse to grow, right? But that's our brethren and sisterin. Listen, we do not leave our physical body. Our physical bodies leave us like a discarded shroud that is no longer of any use. We begin where we left off, unchanged, except for the renewed perfection of our spiritual bodies and with the same consciousness as before. Until then, it is only the temporary dullness of our spiritual senses caused by the influence of our physical shells that belies that reality. All of us, regardless of who we are or how miserably we may have failed in life, we're actually future angels in embryonic form, destined for an eternal life that progresses through endless realms of growth and experience. Even those unfortunates who die in infancy are never lost. Each of us is already an immortal soul from the moment of conception, the moment when the Creator's presence brings into, hold on. Each of us is already an immortal soul from the moment of conception, the moment when the Creator's presence brings into being a new, eternally enduring, self conscious soul. Each infant is nurtured in spirit, growing through childhood into mature adulthood, just as it would have had it remained in the mortal realm on earth. Even though it lost the experience of corporality, in that process, its development remains happy, strong, and wholesome. Nevertheless, a fact that can be a comfort to mothers who grieve. Hold on. Even though it has lost the experience of corporality in that process, its development remains happy, strong, and wholesome. Nevertheless, a fact that can be a comfort to mothers who grieve. Our growth and experience, however, starts here on earth, and like all true progress, it is never an easy path nor attained without a struggle. The history handed down in the text of Oahspe clearly illustrates this point and shows that earthly events are not as much random products of chance as they sometimes appear to be to us. Our development and growth have been monitored and guided by our Creator and by the Creator's high raised angels, in whose charge the ever present has placed our care. Oahspe concludes with several doctrinal books that give us guidelines that we may choose to live by to further our own progression. It finally gives a glimpse of our future in the book of Shalom, which, using a parable, describes what the society of the future will be like, though the actual details of how it arises and how it may develop depend on circumstances that may vary substantially from place to place. If you are able to comprehend Owaspe's mind expanding perspective on the universe that we inhabit, both now and in an eternal future. And if you are able to free your mind from the shackles of the limited teachings of the past, it will bring you to a state of understanding that will change your life. I agree with that. You will never see the earth, its people, or the stars above your head in the same way ever again. Right? Listen, I'm gonna ask y'all, okay? Because we at like 40-minute mark, which I'll give it a few more minutes because I was having internet issues. Do y'all want me? This is the last portion of this. This is the banner of light letter at the end, of which I wanted to read that little blurb. Do y'all want me to save this for tomorrow, or y'all want to go ahead and just read it? Because that would be the end of the introduction. I'll be done in a couple minutes, and then I can go ahead and read what I wanted to read today. But I'll let y'all choose. First person to answer it wins it. Be like, yes, read, or no, get into the field guide. Finish it. Jamil says, thank you for the quick fingers. I don't want to just keep reading. If y'all want to be like, just go ahead and okay. All right. The banner of light letter. The following is the text selectively abridged of the letter written by John B. Newbrough to a publication called The Banner of Light to explain in his own words how Oahspe was received. Since Dr. Newbrough is describing events as he perceived them, it is understandable that he should use phrases like, I was not satisfied, or I was craving, or I took it into my head. These personal references could lead one to think that somehow Dr. Newbrough initiated the idea and facilitated the mechanism needed to produce a volume like Oahspe, or that somehow his actions attracted the angelic overshadowing to him as a flame would attract moths. This, of course, could be no further from the truth. The reality was that the planning process for the production of Oahspe was in effect long before Dr. Newbrough was even born, and that his role had been completely a reflection of the will and controlling influences of the angelic overshadowing that chose to use his natural talents to their advantage at a critical moment in time. While Dr. Newbrough's involvement in the process is appreciated, it was purely serendipitous. The Lois Inc. 2016. And this I agree with, just based on some more information that I've been finding out about his life and a little bit about his parents and how they believe, and also thinking about what we learned about the Lewis and how they're masters of generations. And before somebody like this can be born into the world and actually walk something out like he did, there has to be at least 6 generations before him who are molded, right? Because as they're molded, there are certain things that are in them that will be passed down through the children that are born throughout those coming generations until we get one with the ability who can hear clearly from the spiritual realm, not just the spiritual realm, but from the Father, and be able to decipher between the voices that are being heard and have the strength and the courage to put into practice what is happening, what they're learning, right? So they can be like the hands and feet of our unseen brethren and sisterin and the Father as they pass out messages, right? Because one of the rules of our guardian angels and those in line with the Father is they're not to manifest themselves, because that is a portion that helps us further develop our spirit, right? We're spirits here. Teach them how to develop their spirits. Don't just give them candy when they're hollering for candy. Teach them about this so that they can do themselves, right? All of this makes sense to me now, but you will readily get shenaniganizing spirits who are not in line with the creator anymore. That what you want? I'm gonna manifest this. Boom! I'll show you how to do magic tricks. Everything that caters to the flesh, and be like, yes, yes, you can have that. Yes, do that. Do as thou wilt. You can almost 100% of the time guarantee that that information is not coming from the Father nor anybody that is in line with him. That's the cater to your flesh, and it's going to lead you astray, right? Just remember that. Okay, the letter begins. New York, January 21st, 1883. To the editor of The Banner of Light, Boston, Massachusetts. Dear Sir, Oahspe was mechanically written through my hands by some other intelligence than my own. Many spiritualists are acquainted with this automatic movement of the hands, independent of one's own volition. There are thousands and thousands of persons who have this quality. It can also be educated, or rather, the susceptibility to external power can be increased. In my own case, I discovered many years ago when sitting in circles to obtain spiritual manifestations that my hands could not lie on the table without flying off into these tantrums. Often they would write messages left or right, backward or forward, nor could I control them in any way than by withdrawing from the table. Sometimes the power that's baffled would attack my tongue or my eyes or my ears, and I talked and I saw and I heard differently from my normal state. And this goes a little bit in what I'm gonna read y'all here in a second. He talks about that just a little bit. Then I went to work in earnest to investigate spiritualism, and I investigated over 200 mediums, traveling hundreds and hundreds of miles for this purpose. When this stuff started happening to me, like, what in the world is going on? So bits of his mouth and of his eyes and his ears is what we would call today seeing in the spirit or seeing visions. Excuse me, hearing in the spirit or being able to prophesy what you hear and see in the spirit, right? Read it again. Sometimes the power, thus baffled, would attack my tongue or my eyes or my ears, and I talked and saw and heard differently from my normal state. Then I went to work in earnest to investigate spiritualism, and I investigated over 200 mediums, traveling hundreds and hundreds of miles for this purpose. Often I took them to my own house and experimented with them to my heart's content. I found that nearly all of them were subject to this involuntary movement of the hands or to entrancement. They told me it was angels controlling them. In course of time, about 10 or 15 years, I began to believe in spiritualism, but I was not satisfied with the communications. I was craving for the light of heaven. I did not desire communications from friends or relatives or information about earthly things. I wished to learn something about the spirit world, what the angels did, how they traveled, and the general plan of the universe. So after a while, I took it into my head that wise and exalted angels would commune better with us if we purified ourselves physically and spiritually. Then I gave up eating flesh and fish, milk and butter, and took to rising before day, bathing twice a day, and occupying a small room alone, where I sat every morning half an hour before sunrise, recounting daily to my Creator my shortcomings in governing myself in thought and deed, or what we would call today repentance, right? In 6 years training, I reduced myself from 250 pounds down to 180. My rheumatism was all gone and I had no more headache. I became limber and sprightly. A new lease of life came to me. And that's something I can tell you. Once you cut out that stuff, even though I'm still working to get the weight down and not be a junk food vegan, that's my biggest problem, right? I had migraines and stuff. Matter of fact, my medical disability from the military is because of the migraines. And when I got there, because of the division I was working before I went TAD to security, or temporarily assigned duty to security, was the fuels division. And it heightened that. I was always in medical because of these excruciating migraines. And everything from my division just made it worse, right? But I noticed once I gave up the flesh eating lifestyle, that resolved itself, right? It resolved itself. In 6 years training, I reduced myself from 250 pounds down to 180. My rheumatism was all gone and I had no more headache. I became limber and sprightly. A new lease of life came to me. Then a new condition of control came upon my hands. Instead of angels holding my hands as formerly, they held their hands over my head, and they were clothed with sufficient materiality for me to see them, and the light fell upon my hands as they lay on the table. In the meantime, I had attained to hear audible angel voices near me. I was directed to get a typewriter which writes by keys like a piano. This I did, and I applied myself industriously to learn it, but with only indifferent success. For 2 years more, the angels propounded to me questions relative to heaven and earth, which no mortal could answer very intelligently. I always look back on these 2 years as an enigma. Perhaps it was to show me that man is but an ignoramus at best. Perhaps I was waiting for constitutional growth to be good. Well, one morning, the light struck both my hands on the back, and they went for the typewriter for some 15 minutes very vigorously. I was told not to read what was printed, and I had worked myself into such a religious fear of losing this new power that I obeyed reverently. The next morning, also before sunrise, the same power came and wrote, or printed rather, again. Again, I lay the matter away very religiously, saying little about it to anybody. One morning, I accidentally, seemed accidental to me, looked out the window and beheld the line of light that rested on my hands, extending heavenward like a telegraph wire towards the sky. Over my head were three pairs of hands, fully materialized. Behind me stood another angel with her hands on my shoulders. My looking did not disturb the scene. My hands kept right on printing, printing. For 50 weeks, this continued every morning, half an hour or so before sunrise, and then it ceased. And I was told to read and publish the book of Oahspe. The peculiar drawings in Oahspe were made with the pencil in the same way. A few of the drawings I was told to copy from other books, such as Saturn, the Egyptian ceremonies, etc. Now, during all the while I have pursued my vocation, dentistry, nor has this matter nor my diet, vegetables, fruit, and foren- forenaceous food detracted from any detracted any from my health or strength, although I have continued this discipline for upwards of 10 or more years. I am firmly convinced that there are numberless persons who might attain to marvelous development if they would thus train themselves. And the last sentence of this letter is a strict integrity to one's highest light is essential to development. Self abnegation and purity should be the model and discipline of everyone capable of angel communion. Yours truly, John B. Newbrough. Where we at? 52 minutes. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's hop over here. Anita, shalom. Derry CM, shalom, shalom. Okay, and so I'm gonna read this, and then we'll take a couple minutes and we'll hop into the field guide. Okay, so the printout, the link that's in the community section, the very last one that I posted, is it comes from the digital repository, right? University of New Mexico.edu plus all the extra letters and stuff after that right there, right? And I posted page 6 to page 8. So on page 6, if you want to read where I'm going, go down to the middle of the page where it says in 1870. We're going to start right there. And read the whole thing, but this specifically I want to pull out because it gives more information on what he did with his diet and stuff. All right. In 1870, Dr. Newbrough became a vegetarian. About this time, he began systematic fasting. That's what caught my eye. I was like, yo, he was fasting too? Look, because I've been in this process and getting my fasting game up, right? Because I understand there's a lot of spiritual insight that comes to me when I fast, right? So I was like, I'll make this a lifestyle. Remember when we read about Judith in was it in Maccabees? Was it in Maccabees or was it in Legends of the Jews? But anyway, remember it was Judith after her husband had died, and her husband was a righteous man. After her husband died, she changed her lifestyle into fasting 5 days a week, right? She fasted for the rest from the time her husband passed. She fasted 5 days a week, and she only ate on 2 days of the week, which was the day before Sabbath and Sabbath. Clearly, we know now we can probably flip it around and make one of the fast days the Sabbath and a preparation day. But anyway, in there it says that she ate 5 days a week, and she fasted 5 days a week, and she ate on preparation day and on Sabbath, right? But for the rest of the time while she did that, there was so much wisdom that came from the Father. And even though Israel had no king at that time, she was kind of like the king, although it didn't call her the king, but Israel didn't have a king, but all of Israel looked up to her just because of the wisdom that the Father would pour into her because of her life, because of her disciplined lifestyle, right? I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, sis, I gotta get like you, right? Because some places in my life is out of control, and I don't want to be this way. I gotta bring myself back into line. All this freedom that I let myself have and enjoy, we need to fix this, right? Okay. In 1870, Dr. Newbro became a vegetarian. About this time, he began systematic fasting. Especially did he eschew all recreation and food when under stress or indecision. So he wasn't an emotional eater. And when he couldn't make a decision, he didn't eat, right? A lot of us, we got to get that under control. Mostly women deal with that, but some men do too, right? He when he got in those situations, he never put food in his mouth. He fasted. About this time, he began systematic fasting. Especially did he eschew all recreation and food when under stress or indecision. He ate but one moderate meal a day, except when under physical strain. We would call one meal a day OMAD, one meal a day OMAD, right? He ate but one moderate meal a day, except when under physical strain. Directed by spirit control, he traveled extensively through Europe and the Orient. He spent much time in religious research in China and Japan. He was drawn to the mysticism of Egypt and India. He was especially interested in the Sufis of Persia. The cultures of past peoples became his obsession, a study which led him to his recognition as an authority on the sources of ancient religions. A votary of Oriental art, he believed a beautiful setting to be stimulating to fine thinking and habits of living, and strove in his own life for the expression of beauty in his environment. He studied in rooms filled with flowers and singing birds, and would relax in the rich robes of Chinese and Greek design. He lectured in England and America in vestments of scarlet and white and oriental combinations of color. The doctor's study of Eastern mysticism had fanned his desire for for psychical truth into a passionate summons. Casting aside family objections and conventional thought, he labeled fear as crass ignorance. He believed the supernatural to be but natural law, as yet thought unworthy of scientific investigation. He strove for the development of psychic power within himself. He had already attained to manifestations in which his hands would fly into tantrums and would write messages in all directions, independent of his will. He had but to close his eyes to read with accuracy the printed page of a designated book in a library. I told y'all this is one of look. I told y'all probably a couple months ago. I was like, I know you can read books because I got so many books in my library, some that I got that I haven't even got a chance. So I'm like, Father, I know there's a way to do this. I said, there has to be a way. I was like, look, because I seen it in Doctor Strange. Look at me using a movie. I was like, they showing this. I was like, but I feel deep down in my shot, I know that this is something that can be done. Right. And then we read in here. This is before, like, I saw this before I even read this on Oahspe when it was given talking about the children of Shalom, right? That the children of Shalom, as they develop they can just. Susan B. Martinez was I'm just like, what? I'm like, we can do that. I was like, I feel that's like truth. I feel like that can happen. I was like, how do I have to develop myself to be able to do that? I got so many books I still need to read. And I didn't only see that in Doctor Strange. Remember the series on Netflix that I told you about called it's not Key House, but it's the house with all the different magical keys and stuff. And one of the keys in there was the ability to unlock this, being able to read books and literally download it. I'm like, yo, see, I've seen this on more than one thing. I said, I know we have the ability to do this. I'm gonna figure it out, right? And I'm gonna teach my children too. I'm like, yo, Saya wake up. He's like, Mom, are we ever going to get to be superheroes? I'm like, you know what, son? We really are, but we have to develop some certain things about ourselves. I said, but I'm gonna figure it out. As I learn, y'all gonna learn too. I said, we're gonna be the real superheroes. We're gonna be the real Incredibles here. Listen, I be playing, but I don't really be playing. I be so serious, but I can really only talk like that freely with my kids because they're childlike and So let me finish reading this. Listen, hold on. He strove for the development of psychic power within himself. He had already attained to manifestations in which his hands would fly into tantrums and would write messages in all directions, independent of his will. He had but to close his eyes to read with accuracy the printed page of a designated book in a library. Mediumistic circles declared him able to leave his body at will to travel to distant places and return with correct reports. We know this is true because even the government does this. Remember the CIA document they prove in their study, them testing this, you can leave your body at will, go pull information and bring it back. They tested it in rooms of people, put them over here. And when they say, well, maybe you're too close, probably picking up like physical body energy, put them a few states away. Put them in the West Coast. We'll keep them over here on the East Coast. And they're still able to bring back this information. We can do this. Listen. Mediumistic circles declared him able to leave his body at will to travel to distant places and return with correct reports. At times, the power would attack his tongue, eyes, and ears, and he would speak, see, and hear unaccountably. He would suddenly leave his companions to write dictation in strange tongues. For 2 years, Dr. Newbro was a member of the Domain, a spiritualistic colony at Jamestown, New York, and a trustee of the New York State Spiritualistic Society. While a leader of these groups, he examined more than 200 mediums, putting them through the most severe test of integrity. He would travel hundreds of miles to bring a noted medium under observation. He was neither satisfied with nor interested in the chatter of deceased relatives. He wished to contact the minds of great men passed on to learn the plan of the universe, of life's cause, or spiritual evolution. The oracle of the children's land was forming, but it was yet obeyant. But it was as yet obeyant. Distressed with the character and limitations of spiritualistic manifestations, Nubero became convinced that communication with the wise and worthy of the spirit world could better be attained through physical purification and the concentration of the mind on inner powers. Already a vegetarian, he struck from his diet all milk and eggs, practiced the strictest chastity of body and mind, bathed twice daily, and worked with renewed vigor. Later, he went even further in simplifying his diet, taking only such foods as received the beneficent rays of the sun, thus eliminating all root vegetables. This is something that Yaqui teaches, right? That we're created fruitarians, and the roots, right? The roots and the herbs, they're literally to heal and restore the body, right? But we will thrive on a fruit-based diet, and this has been tested. Science is catching up with it, but master herbalists get this a whole lot faster because they're like all in 100%, while the scientific field they're a little bit more with slower with testing things, right? Some a little slow, some a little faster, but when you are focused on like one thing, you can develop a whole lot faster. And he's proven this, and he has like his own lab that he networks with testing and all the stuff Yaki I'm talking about, where he talks about this, and even talks about the information coming from fruits. He even tells he gives his testimony one time before he became where he's at today, when he was cleansing up his own body, when he went on mono fruit fast, and what would happen to his body and what would happen to him spiritually, right? Listen. Already a vegetarian, he struck from his diet all milk and eggs, practiced the strictest chastity of body and mind, bathed twice daily, and worked with renewed vigor. Later, he went even further in simplifying his diet, taking only such foods as receive the beneficent rays of the sun, thus eliminating all root vegetables. For years, he arose each morning at dawn for spiritual guidance. He believed this to be the hour when vibrations and thought transference would be least interrupted by confusions in the ether. We talked about this a little bit before when we was talking about the chakras. I showed you the chart. Let me show you real quick again. Where my charts? Oh, okay. Up here, it shows you, and you can simply go test these things. Don't be getting freaked out. Oh my gosh, you're talking about chakras and the endocrine system. You got one. You got energies that come from all your major organs that go up and down your spine, from your root to your crown, from your head to your tailbone, right? Everybody got them. Listen. But up here on one of these, this one, right at the top, it shows you, and I'll share this again. I got these from Amazon, right? But you can test these things, right? Some of these things that they're talking about by actually testing, you can test different times of the day when you get up and you try to like go before the Father, meditate or whatever. You'll find out that the early morning hours, you will get more insight. You just got to be consistent with it. This shows you right here, right here in the corner. Hold on, let me show it for Facebook. Then I'll hold on, give it to YouTube. Kind of blue. Right here. It'll be clear when I post it for y'all. Right here at the bottom. Right here at the bottom. This right here in this little corner. This is the sun rising. This is the body laying down, and the perfect times for meditating when spiritual insight is the highest for us, right? And it shows you sun rays are strongest in each chakra color, and it just kind of goes through that, right? So 4 to 6 a.m., like the dream silence receiving. So between 4 and 6 a.m. is when you would get like the most spiritual insight. But you got to get up to see it, right? Anytime before the sun rises is when you would get the most information. Not saying that you can't throughout the day, but from my personal testing, right, which is why I'm striving, I'm just steady moving things back, right? So even before I get up here with y'all, like if I'm not running behind, I can get up early, so I'm already up. And me getting here on time is not an issue, but you also have to take into account how you eat and how late you eat. If you eat anytime after 6, 7 p.m., and depending on what you eat, especially if it's heavy, it's going to be hard for you to wake up in the morning. Sometimes some people just work themselves into a rhythm where they just get up and go, and that's okay. But you want it to be a natural thing. I found out that when you eat light or you don't put anything in your mouth after about 5 or 6, definitely no later than 7, the body can do what it does, and you won't need an alarm clock. Your internal alarm clock will click on, and you will naturally rise before the sun, right? So it's a lot of stuff that I'm learning, testing, putting into practice over these years. I'm like, yo, we're gonna keep this, get rid of this. And the things that I keep, it's adding to my development of my spirit. And as I learn it, I teach my family. And because I want to make it a part of my children's lives, and so they can just walk in it earlier. Some of my older kids, they have it a little bit harder time simply because we didn't already raise them a certain way. Now we're trying to go back and correct some things and just get them to see. But they kind of learn now by observing us and how we're changing. And when they ask questions, we're honest and we share, okay, this. At that time, I didn't know that. I thought that's what we should have did. And I'm sorry. This is how we're adjusting this now. So the children coming up now, they getting all the spiritual stuff, to whereas they just kind of got, my oldest two, Elijah and Jeremiah, they just kind of got the religious stuff because that's the state where I was at when they were younger. I'm definitely gonna share the cards and stuff with y'all. Okay, so go back to this. For years, he arose each morning at dawn for spiritual guidance. He believed this to be the hour when vibrations and thought transference would be least interrupted by confusions in the ether. After 6 years of this discipline, he had reduced his giant frame from 270 to 160 pounds. He was free of physical ills, his brain had cleared. Nerve currents had found healthier reflexes, and new vibrations were in evidence. Verily, he was born again. As Dr. Newbro had divined, he had reached a new and higher plane of communication. He speaks of the early 1880s. The spirits hovering over me were clothed with sufficient materiality for me to see them. I had attained to hear angel voices around about me. I was directed to procure a typewriter, which is he is adding this what we just read here. I had attained to hear angel voices around about me. I was directed to procure a typewriter, a new invention which writes like the keys of a piano. I applied myself to this invention with indifferent success. For 2 years, angels, good spirits, propounded to me questions relative to heaven and earth that no mortal man could answer intelligently. One morning, lines of light rested on my hands, extending downward like wires. Over my head were 3 pairs of hands fully materialized, while behind me an angel stood with hands on my shoulders. My fingers played over the typewriter with lightning speed. I was forbidden to read what I had written, and I had reached such religious ecstasy that I obeyed reverently. This same power visited me each morning. My hands kept on writing. For 50 weeks, this continued daily. Then I was told to publish the book, which would be called Oahspe, a Panaric word meaning earth, air, and spirit. The peculiar illustrations were made with pencil the peculiar illustrations were made with pencil under the same control. I was instructed to copy a few from the Saturn, the Egyptian ceremonies, and other books. During all this time, which some people, when they argue about this, or what he's taking pieces, well, he tells you he was instructed to pull some of this stuff, because Oahspe is giving you a background of how all the religions started, right? But also all how the earth started. So if people just read the preface and the introduction, it tells you what has been done, right? Aside from the actual overshadowing and giving the information that no man knew, and that he couldn't just work this up himself. Then I was told to publish the book, which should be called Oahspe, a panoramic word meaning earth, air, and spirit. The peculiar illustrations were made with pencil under the same control. I was instructed to copy a few from the Saturn, the Egyptian ceremonies, and other books. During all this time, I pursued my vocation, nor had the diet or fasting to which I had subjected myself for the past 16 years detracted from my health. When he said during this time he pursued his vocation, meaning he didn't just lock himself away and just do spiritual things. He did his morning devotions and all that stuff, and he went to work, working in his dentistry, right? Working on his business. And he became a very successful and wealthy uh, dentist. And his practice was very, very prominent, right? So some people that say, "Oh, I just need to be here and do the scriptures all day," you can be on the street, you bum. During all this time, I pursued my vocation, nor had the diet or fasting to which I had subjected myself for the past 16 years detracted from my health. I am fully convinced that there are numberless persons who might attain to health and spiritual development if they would but practice the strictest adherence to the highest light. And that is the end of that. So, but I thought that was really, really good. I was like, oh, because I didn't even realize that he had even made a habit and lifestyle of fasting as well. And I just like, yep, we need to add this. So I'm glad we kept reading, so I was able to keep all of that together, right? So we can pause right here, and we are not going to be able to get into this today because we gotta go. The few minutes that I was late because I couldn't get my internet going, we used up that time too. So that's it for today. So we'll pick back up in the field guide to the spirit realm tomorrow. And we'll just go from there. So let me put my page numbers. I hope y'all enjoyed it. But do, when you get a chance, go back and read that whole document that I put up there. And I'm gonna try and find this other one that I've been looking for, which also gave the reference in here that I didn't even realize. I found it, but it's just giving me the reference and all this stuff. But the places I've gone to, it's not blowing up. So I'm wondering if this is one of the ones that's in the archives in New Mexico. And if it's there, then I'm gonna have to get the copies made. And then once we do that and we make it digital, we'll share it. All right, beautiful people. So that was page 18. We didn't do this today. We'll pick this back up tomorrow. Put it over here. Spirit guide. Okay, y'all. It is Tuesday, November the 1st, 2022, day 252 of year 4 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets and of the 4-year consecutive day count. It is day 1271. Yesterday's video, I said the wrong number because I messed my count up on Sunday and I didn't catch it till yesterday. And in the videos, I said it wrong. And I said yesterday, I think I said 250. Yeah, I said 250 yesterday and Sunday. I just messed my numbers up. But yesterday was actually day 270. I'm sorry, 1270. Today is day 1271 of the 4-year consecutive day count. We read Oahspe. We finished reading the introduction, pages 14 to 18. And we read this extra portion from the article that gives a little bit more about Dr. Newborough's life. It gives a lot of details. I do highly recommend that you guys read that because it's going to clear up a lot of things. Like I said, and it's going to even get into some of the details of what happened with the children and why they died. Because if you let other people tell it that don't even care to even read through the book or do proper research, they're going to say, oh, but how many children? Then some babies died under his care. Imagine, because when they said that, it just hit me. I'm like, oh my God, babies died. So listening to them say it, it's like it gives you the wrong interpretation because they're ignorant of the text and even of the man's life and what actually happened. So the way they said it made it seem like there was some abuses and neglect going on. 3 babies died. And it says, what? Share that with me. Where they die at? And I'm just like, oh, snap. We should know that. And that's what caused me to start going look into this. I'm like, wait a minute. They didn't say that they died, yellow fever was going around. You know how as time is developing, you got outbreaks of different things, and the medical field is not as advanced as it is now. So certain things happen. People were dying of things then that they aren't dying of today, just because, for one, the cleanliness of things, right? Not understanding how we should keep our atmosphere clean and germ-free and all this stuff. But them babies died of yellow fever. Right, they were very well taken care of. They were not neglected from the stuff that I'm pulling up. And that's what I'm sharing with y'all. If I come across anything negative, I'm gonna share that too, right? Because I'm not biased when it comes to information. We need a full, complete story of what actually happened. All right, so that's it, y'all. I'll share this this chart and I'll pull up. I think I can search my Amazon and pull up the link. And it was only like a couple dollars, right? And they come laminated and stuff. I got quite a few of them, all these, and even minerals and crystals and all that stuff. Just looking into the properties, all that good stuff. This is great for your spiritual education. Yes, babe. Hold on. Let me go ahead. And you want to end this? All right, y'all. I love y'all. See y'all back here tomorrow. Father, we thank you that your truth is unsurpassed. All right. I love y'all. See y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bruce. All right. Go ahead, Tootie. Oh, hold on. Let me move this. Oh, I'm dropping my book. My charts, rather. All right. Go ahead.
Mommy, what's that? Can you just fail?
My charts.
What is that? What is under there?
Oh, my iPad. You was looking for this? I needed my iPad today. I used it. Go ahead and end that, Tootie. My charts. Bye, y'all.
I need to go there right now.
Hey, girl. Hey.